The countdown has officially begun, and what you're about to hear may shock you. Imagine waking up one day to find your state bankrupt, public services failing, businesses shutting down, schools crumbling, and people fleeing in droves. Sounds like a disaster movie, right? But for some states in America, this scenario isn't just fiction, it's a looming reality. In this video, we're going to reveal 10 U.S. states on the brink of collapse in 2025, and you won't believe which ones made the list. From hidden financial time bombs to devastating population declines, some states are quietly inching closer to disaster while the rest of the country watches without noticing. Why is this happening? Which states are most at risk? And what signs are they ignoring that could push them over the edge next year? Stay with me until the end, because the state ranked number 1 will surprise you, and it might be closer to collapse than anyone realizes. Let's begin. Number 10. Oregon. Oregon, once known for its vibrant cities and breathtaking natural beauty, is now facing a combination of social and economic challenges that could lead it towards serious decline. Portland, the state's largest city, was previously celebrated as a hub for creativity, technology, and progressive values. However, in recent years, it has become the center of rising crime rates, homelessness, and business closures. Downtown areas that were once packed with tourists, locals, and thriving small businesses now struggle with vacant storefronts, tent cities, and an uneasy atmosphere that is driving people away. Beyond Portland, the entire state is dealing with a deepening housing crisis. Skyrocketing home prices and rental costs have made it nearly impossible for average Oregonians to afford stable housing. Even middle-class families are being priced out, and many are moving to neighboring states, accelerating the population decline. Meanwhile, rural areas are being left behind economically, with industries like logging, fishing, and manufacturing continuing to shrink. The economic imbalance between urban and rural Oregon is becoming harder to ignore, creating political and social tensions within the state. If Oregon fails to reverse these trends, it may face even more severe consequences in 2025. The growing exodus of residents, collapsing local economies, and declining public services could push the state into a downward spiral that would be difficult to escape. The question many Oregonians are quietly asking is, how much longer can the state hold on before it hits a breaking point? Without immediate and bold action, Oregon could find itself slipping closer to the brink of collapse, surprising many who once viewed it as one of America's most livable states. Number 9. Illinois. Illinois has been sounding alarm bells for years, but in 2025, the situation could reach a dangerous boiling point. The state's financial troubles are no secret. It carries one of the highest unfunded pension liabilities in the entire nation. For decades, Illinois underfunded its public pension system while making generous promises to teachers, state employees, and public safety workers. Now, the bill is coming due, and the state is struggling to keep up. Year after year, more and more of Illinois' budget is consumed just to pay down pension obligations, leaving less money for education, healthcare, infrastructure, and vital public services. This is no longer just a fiscal issue. It is threatening the basic functionality of the state. In addition to its pension crisis, Illinois is witnessing a massive exodus of residents. For several years in a row, Illinois has ranked among the top states in population loss. Families and businesses are fleeing for more affordable and financially stable states. Chicago, once the economic engine of Illinois and a globally recognized city, is losing residents at an alarming rate. High crime rates, heavy taxes, and crumbling infrastructure are pushing people away. Those who remain are often left to shoulder even more of the tax burden, creating a vicious cycle that is accelerating the state's decline. Many businesses, both large and small, have also decided to relocate, further weakening the state's economy. Infrastructure across Illinois is deteriorating faster than the state can afford to repair it. From bridges to highways to public transit, Illinois is struggling to maintain what it has, let alone make upgrades. Chicago's public transit system, once one of the finest in the country, now suffers from frequent delays, breakdowns, and underfunding. Schools in many parts of the state, especially in rural and impoverished areas, are falling apart, and students are being deprived of the education they deserve. The cost of living remains relatively high compared to what residents receive in return, making Illinois an increasingly unattractive place to live for young families and professionals. Unless there is a dramatic shift. Politically, economically, and socially, Illinois may continue on this dangerous path. The state government seems stuck, unable to make the deep structural reforms needed to balance its budget, reduce its pension debt, and reinvigorate its economy. If things continue as they are, Illinois may reach a critical breaking point as early as 2025. Some experts even warn that the state could face a form of financial collapse where essential public services would be severely cut or fail entirely. The question is, how long can Illinois hold on before this warning turns into reality? Number 8. Mississippi. Mississippi's looming collapse is not the result of a single crisis, but a combination of long-standing and deeply rooted problems that are reaching a dangerous climax. The state ranks near the bottom of nearly every positive indicator in the country: education, healthcare, infrastructure, and income levels. These chronic issues have kept Mississippi locked in a cycle of poverty and stagnation for decades. In recent years, however, the situation has worsened. The national spotlight turned to Jackson, the state capital, as its water system failed, leaving thousands without clean drinking water. But what many don't realize is that similar issues are quietly affecting towns and cities across the state. Aging infrastructure, underinvestment, and neglect are putting the state's essential services on the brink of failure. The state's healthcare crisis is equally alarming. Mississippi consistently ranks as one of the least healthy states, with high rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and infant mortality. Many rural areas have little to no access to hospitals or basic medical care due to the closure of numerous rural hospitals in recent years. The COVID-19 pandemic only exposed how fragile Mississippi's healthcare system truly is. Combined with an underfunded education system that leaves many students behind, the state is locking future generations into a cycle of poor health and limited economic opportunity. Mississippi is becoming a place where simply accessing the basic necessities of life is becoming harder and harder for everyday citizens. Economically, Mississippi continues to struggle. The state has one of the lowest median household incomes and highest poverty rates in the nation. Job opportunities are limited, and those who can afford to are leaving for neighboring states with more robust economies. Businesses are hesitant to invest in a state where infrastructure is crumbling, the labor force is shrinking, and the education system is underperforming. The combination of a weak tax base, limited economic growth, and growing social needs has put Mississippi in a bind that is only tightening with time. Even federal assistance has not been enough to fully address the systemic issues that keep holding the state back. Unless there is significant and sustained intervention, Mississippi risks falling even deeper into crisis by 2025. Experts warn that infrastructure failures like Jackson's water system could become more common, healthcare could continue to deteriorate, and the state's shrinking population could leave entire communities on the verge of collapse. The most tragic part is that many of Mississippi's problems are solvable, but years of political gridlock, underinvestment, and neglect have left the state teetering on the edge. The next few years may determine whether Mississippi can pull itself back or finally slip into full-blown collapse. Number 7. California. It might surprise some to see California on this list. After all, it's the wealthiest state in the U.S. and even ranks as the world's 5th largest economy. But beneath the surface of Silicon Valley billionaires and Hollywood glamour, California is facing deep-rooted problems that could lead to a dangerous breaking point. The cost of living is unbearable for the average resident. Housing prices have skyrocketed far beyond the reach of most working families, forcing many into homelessness or driving them out of the state altogether. Cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego, once seen as dream destinations, are now at the center of a growing homelessness crisis. Tent encampments line the streets, and the social divide between the rich and poor is wider than ever. California's infrastructure is buckling under its own weight. Aging roads, bridges, and water systems are in desperate need of repair, but funding and political will are often tied up in bureaucratic gridlock. Meanwhile, the state faces growing threats from natural disasters. Wildfires, droughts, and water shortages have become a yearly reality, damaging homes, disrupting communities, and putting massive strain on the state's emergency services and power grid. Blackouts and water rationing are no longer rare occurrences, but are becoming part of everyday life for many Californians. The climate crisis, combined with poor forest management and outdated infrastructure, is pushing the state closer to a tipping point. What worries many experts is that California's leaders seem locked in political gridlock, unable to agree on how to fix the state's problems effectively. The state has massive wealth, brilliant innovators, and world-class resources, yet it's trapped in a pattern of patchwork solutions and short-term fixes. If California can't find a way to address its housing crisis, infrastructure failures, and climate threats, it could spiral into deeper decline by 2025. Many fear that the Golden State may soon lose its shine, and perhaps even its status as the nation's powerhouse. Number 6, Louisiana. Louisiana's story is one of a state repeatedly battered by both natural and man-made disasters, and it is now inching toward a full-blown collapse if current trends continue into 2025. Known for its rich culture, music, and culinary traditions, Louisiana is simultaneously one of the most vulnerable states when it comes to natural disasters. Hurricanes, floods, and rising sea levels are no longer occasional threats. They are frequent, devastating events. New Orleans and other coastal cities are under constant threat from storm surges and levee failures, while entire communities face the possibility of being wiped off the map. As climate change accelerates, Louisiana's coastline is literally disappearing, with miles of land vanishing into the Gulf of Mexico every year. The economic situation is equally troubling. Louisiana's economy heavily relies on industries like oil, gas, and petrochemicals, sectors that are not only environmentally risky but also volatile. As the global economy shifts toward renewable energy, and as oil prices continue to fluctuate, Louisiana faces declining job prospects in its most vital industries. Many rural areas have been left behind as the energy sector modernizes and automates. High poverty rates, failing public schools, and a struggling healthcare system have only compounded the issue, leaving large portions of the population without the tools to improve their situations. If Louisiana does not make urgent investments in climate resilience, diversify its economy, and overhaul its crumbling infrastructure, the next few years could be disastrous. Many experts fear that the state could suffer a population collapse as residents flee to safer and more stable areas. With climate threats worsening and economic opportunities fading, Louisiana is standing on fragile ground. Without decisive action, 2025 could be the year that pushes this already struggling state past the point of no return. Number 5, New Mexico. New Mexico, often called the Land of Enchantment, is blessed with stunning landscapes, rich Native American and Hispanic cultures, and natural beauty, but beneath its charming surface lies a state struggling against a tide of economic decline, poverty, and institutional failures. In recent years, New Mexico has consistently ranked near the bottom in national rankings for education, healthcare, and economic opportunity. The state's poverty rate hovers around 18%, one of the highest in the country, and child poverty is even more severe. Many young people grow up without access to quality education or healthcare, and a significant number of them leave the state in search of better opportunities elsewhere, accelerating the so-called brain drain effect. What's equally concerning is New Mexico's economy, which has long been dependent on oil, gas, and government jobs, all sectors highly susceptible to volatility. When energy prices fluctuate or federal funding shifts, entire communities suffer the consequences. Rural areas are especially hard hit, where unemployment is high, job prospects are limited, and public services are underfunded. The agriculture industry, another pillar of New Mexico's economy, is now under serious threat due to worsening droughts, depleted aquifers, and climate change, which are making traditional farming and ranching increasingly unsustainable. Environmental degradation and water scarcity add another layer of crisis. New Mexico is one of the driest states in the U.S., and its water supplies are under relentless pressure from both climate change and overconsumption. The Rio Grande, a vital water source, is shrinking. Without serious water management reforms and sustainable practices, the state could face an outright water crisis in the coming years. Combined with the economic struggles, poor infrastructure, and high crime rates, New Mexico risks slipping into a deeper collapse by 2025 if decisive action is not taken soon. Number 4. Alaska. At first glance, Alaska seems far removed from the economic and social struggles of the lower 48 states. Its breathtaking wilderness, abundant natural resources, and close-knit communities paint a picture of rugged independence. However, Alaska is facing a quiet but serious collapse, driven by a toxic combination of economic instability, climate change, and social challenge. The state's oil-dependent economy has been in decline for years. Oil revenues, which once made Alaska one of the wealthiest states in America through its permanent fund dividend program, have dried up significantly due to global shifts away from fossil fuels and declining production. As a result, the state faces massive budget shortfalls, and basic public services like education, healthcare, and infrastructure are suffering. Alaska's rural communities, especially Native Alaskan villages, are among the hardest hit. Many of these areas are experiencing extreme poverty, high suicide rates, and a lack of basic services such as clean water, affordable food, and reliable healthcare. Harsh winters, geographic isolation, and crumbling infrastructure make daily life a struggle. Some villages are even facing relocation due to coastal erosion and permafrost thawing, a direct consequence of the climate crisis. Unlike other states where migration is an option, many rural Alaskans are deeply tied to their land, culture, and traditional ways of life, making displacement a cultural tragedy, not just an economic one. Alaska's government has struggled to adapt. Budget cuts, political disagreements, and the ongoing reliance on an oil-based economy have left the state without a clear path forward. Without bold diversification of its economy, investment in sustainable infrastructure, and support for its most vulnerable communities, Alaska could see a sharp population decline and an irreversible decline in quality of life. What was once the frontier of American prosperity is now standing on dangerously thin ice, both literally and figuratively, as 2025 approaches. Number 3. West Virginia. West Virginia, once a proud symbol of America's coal-powered industrial might, is now facing one of the most difficult declines of any state. For decades, coal was the lifeblood of West Virginia's economy, providing thousands of jobs and a steady flow of wealth to small towns and communities nestled within the Appalachian Mountains. However, as the world transitions away from fossil fuels and shifts toward renewable energy, the coal industry has crumbled, leaving behind empty mines, ghost towns, and a devastated workforce. Generations of West Virginians who depended on coal have been left behind, with few alternative industries to absorb the shock. The decline has been relentless, and as of 2025, the state is still struggling to reinvent itself. The economic damage has gone far beyond the mines. West Virginia has one of the lowest labor force participation rates in the nation, meaning many working-age adults are simply not employed or actively seeking work. Job opportunities are scarce, especially in rural areas, and the state's economy has failed to diversify beyond coal. Poverty has become a way of life for many families, with West Virginia ranking among the top states for food insecurity, poor healthcare access, and low educational attainment. The opioid epidemic has only deepened the crisis, leaving many communities overwhelmed with addiction, broken families, and a healthcare system stretched to its limits. Despite the resilience of its people and the beauty of its mountains, West Virginia is at a critical crossroads. Without a bold and strategic effort to diversify its economy, combat drug addiction, and rebuild its social and physical infrastructure, the state risks continuing on a downward spiral. The clock is ticking, and without major intervention, West Virginia may be one of the states hit hardest by collapse in 2025. Number 2, Kentucky. Kentucky, known for its rolling hills, horse racing, and bourbon, is battling deep-rooted problems that are bringing it closer to economic and social collapse. While Kentucky boasts rich traditions and cultural pride, it also consistently ranks among the worst states for health, education, and economic opportunity. The poverty rate is alarmingly high, especially in Appalachian regions and rural communities where job opportunities are few and far between. Like its neighbor West Virginia, Kentucky has historically depended on coal and manufacturing, two industries that have rapidly declined over the past 2 decades. The result is a shrinking labor force, stagnant wages, and increasing rates of unemployment. One of Kentucky's most severe challenges is the public health crisis. The state leads the nation in cancer rates, obesity, and smoking-related illnesses, placing immense pressure on an already strained healthcare system. Rural hospitals are closing at an alarming rate, leaving entire communities without access to basic medical care. This, combined with the opioid epidemic, has led to a situation where the life expectancy in parts of Kentucky is among the lowest in the United States. The healthcare infrastructure is failing not just medically, but socially, as many families are forced to deal with the devastating impacts of addiction and untreated illnesses on their own. Education is another area where Kentucky is falling behind. Schools in rural and impoverished areas suffer from severe underfunding, outdated facilities, and teacher shortages. This creates a vicious cycle where undereducated youth face limited employment prospects and are more likely to remain in poverty or leave the state entirely. Kentucky's future is increasingly uncertain as young people migrate to other states for better opportunities, leaving behind aging populations and struggling communities. The brain drain is draining not just talent, but hope. Number 1, Hawaii. Hawaii, a dream destination for millions, is ironically the state facing one of the most complex and dangerous forms of collapse. Tourists see paradise, pristine beaches, lush landscapes, and vibrant island culture, but residents are facing a growing nightmare of economic instability, housing insecurity, and environmental threats. Hawaii has one of the highest costs of living in the entire United States, yet the median income remains modest, making basic survival difficult for many locals. The state is experiencing a mass exodus as native Hawaiians and longtime residents are forced to leave their ancestral lands simply because they can no longer afford to live there. The housing crisis is perhaps the most glaring symptom of Hawaii's collapse. The surge in short-term vacation rentals, luxury developments, and real estate speculation has driven up housing prices to astronomical levels. Families who have lived on the islands for generations are being priced out of their homes. Tent cities and homelessness are becoming a visible and heartbreaking reality across Honolulu and other islands. For many, the dream of living in paradise has turned into a daily struggle to afford rent, food, and other basic necessities. Hawaii now ranks among the worst states in America for homelessness rates per capita. In addition to the housing and economic crisis, Hawaii faces severe environmental challenges. Being on the front lines of climate change, the islands are vulnerable to rising sea levels, stronger hurricanes, and coastal erosion. Some communities are already witnessing their shorelines vanish, forcing them to relocate or fortify at great expense. Freshwater supplies are also under threat, with droughts becoming more frequent. Traditional food systems, including fishing and taro farming, are at risk, disrupting not only the local economy, but also the cultural identity of native Hawaiians. The environment, once the island's greatest asset, is becoming a looming threat. And there you have it, 10 U.S. states standing on the edge of collapse as 2025 approaches. These challenges are real, complex, and growing. The question is, will these states find a way to turn things around, or are we witnessing the slow unraveling of communities, economies, and entire ways of life? Only time will tell. If you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden truths shaping our world.